What's up, Wizards? It's Dev. Mtg letting my hair down today because I kind of wanted like a mad scientist look. You know, we're going into rotation super soon, so what better time to check in on some kooky combos that haven't really been good enough for the current standard, but with a bunch of really powerful things rotating out of the format, maybe now's a good time to take a look at some underappreciated combos and see if they can perform in the new format. So today, I was going to do like a top 5 combos that survive rotation, but then it became a top 10, and then I had like 13 of them, and it was on its way to a top 20, and I was like, dude, you got to stop. So today, 13 or so combos that survive rotation, and maybe we should be paying attention to. Yeah, I'm feeling rich, and I'm finally about to cash out, smothered and covered like I'm some hash browns. And I'm back to tell you to subscribe to the channel. Don't worry, I'm not going to get all like game theory about it. Tell you to subscribe like 8 times in the same video. We're not doing that. Just subscribe. Spoiler season's coming up. You want to. But anyway, let's talk about combos. That's what you came here for. See, when I do a video, actually talk about what the video's about. Not enough people do that. But let's get into some combos here, starting with some of the wackier, more casual stuff. Don't worry. There's some combos in the upcoming format that I think are like potential game-winning combos that we actually have to be like really serious about. We have to put our serious suspenders on for. But I do want to start with some combos that exist in the upcoming format that are, again, just a little bit more fun and in some ways a little bit more budget too, because that does matter. So I guess I've set all it up. I've set the whole thing up. Let's go ahead and do this first dumb combo. That's Phase Dolphin. Yeah, Phase Dolphin. And Nessian Boar. Now you can also use Mistford River Turtle for this if you just want all the bad cards in your deck. But I do want to point out that this combo exists. Way too many people have forgotten that Nessian Boar is a thing. And when it first got spoiled, we talked about it like a green board wipe. Huge air quotes around green board wipe. But very few people ever talked about just like, oh, what if you got in unblockable with it and killed them in 2 turns? Yeah, you can do that too, it turns out, because there's plenty of stuff that make this creature unblockable. But Phase Dolphin, Mistford River Turtle, and stuff like that, probably some of your best bets if you just want to get through with a giant feral hog. But I guess the next like dumb combo, it's a little bit more casual, but I think you actually do have to pay a little bit more attention to this one. Is Archon of Falling Stars, one of my like low-key favorite cards. Actually kind of high-key. I've made no secret that I really like this card because of its combo potential. And Kaya's Ghost Form has been the thing that we've comboed with it to loop it infinitely effectively. But we're going to lose Kaya's Ghost Form. The thing is, we still have Minions Return in this format, which is probably as close as we're going to get to Kaya's Ghost Form. But obviously, Minions Return has some other things you can do with it. Put it on an opponent's creature and then kill that creature. So it's got a little bit more flex than Kaya's Ghost Form. But even with Minions Return, you can still put it on your Archon of Falling Stars, sacrifice your Archon to, say, a Woe Strider, for instance, and then get both the Minions Return and the Archon of Falling Stars back to keep repeating this. And of course, if you've got like an Archon of Sun's Grace or something else with Constellation on the battlefield, well, suddenly you're getting all of the triggers, literally infinite of them. So there's still all kinds of combos we can do with Archon of Falling Stars in the format. I just wanted to point that out because I really like this card. It's a flying cow. I like this card. Now, getting a little bit cooler, but still in kind of the dumb category, we're going to talk about Stormwild Capridor, right? This is a card that has a fan base, like, already. There's some really cool stuff you can do with it, right? You can Justice Strike your own Capridor. You can Deafening Clarion, sweep the board, but whoops, counters go on your Capridor. You can Storm's Wrath, same thing, sweep the board, 4 counters on your Capridor. All of that is really, really cool, but something that people haven't been doing with Capridor that's actually amazing, I promise you, is Primal Might. The reason that I bring this card up is because stuff like Deafening Clarion and, you know, Storm's Wrath, which we do get to keep Storm's Wrath in the upcoming format. Cards like that, we already know are like at least kind of a meme with Capridor, but I just haven't really seen anybody explore this, and Primal Might plus Capridor is actually amazing. Even though the wording looks a little funky to newer players, I would imagine, the fight mechanic is not combat damage. It's not. It's not damage that occurs during the combat steps, not combat damage. So if you Primal Might your Stormwild Capridor, give it like +4/+4 or whatever, have it fight something, not only will it keep that +4/+4 until end of turn, but it'll also get counters from whatever it fought. So you can get a huge Capridor this way like pretty easily, and in the late game, if you rip a Primal Might off the top, then you can just make your Capridor freaking enormous, fly over for the win. So I'm surprised I haven't seen more people explore Primal Might plus Capridor, because that actually is a dope combo. Getting a little bit more serious here, we all have to talk about Ugin, because we know that Ugin's going to be a card in the next format, and it's probably going to be a huge deal, whether your opponent's ramping into it, or maybe they're playing Teamer Adventures and they go get it out of the board with a Fae of Wishes or something. Ugin's going to be a factor in the next format, so what's the best way to cast an Ugin? Well, I think you shouldn't forget that Ironcrag Feat is a card. Now, I've already just put out the, I think the last video on the channel actually was the biggest big red deck ever that we streamed the other day, and if you were there at the stream, you'll note that sometimes this deck just blows people away, because turn 5 Ironcrag into Ugin is just an unbelievable play, and you've got whole decks that have to, you know, play 3-4 ramp spells to get to Ugin by turn 4 or 5, whereas we just have to have one spell and an Ugin, and that's all it takes, son. So it turns out that this was actually a pretty potent combo on stream in a whole bunch of games, and I think that it's only poised to get better after rotation. So I'd look out for this. I actually think that Ugin is what Ironcrag Feat is kind of like meant to do. You can cast Yadaro with it. Right now you can cast like Drakaseth with it, and all of these are sweet plays. But if you really want to wreck somebody, Ironcrag into Ugin, ridiculous. Up next is a combo that we explored a little bit during spoiler season, but then like nobody talked about it. I'm not sure that anybody ever tried to make this combo competitive, but it's still out there, and it still will be after rotation. I'm talking about Riel the Everwise and Channeled Force. Now there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with Riel, from Cathartic Reunion, Tormenting Voice, and even Cycling, because that counts as discarding cards. But with Channeled Force, there's such ridiculous potential, right? Channeled Force has you discard X cards when you cast it, meaning if you have a Riel out, you'll end up drawing basically twice as many cards as you discarded. It's a ridiculous amount of card advantage. Plus, you're probably going to be discarding some instants and sorceries, which makes Riel even bigger. In the meantime, you get to take out like a creature or a planeswalker. So there's just all kinds of card advantage sewed into this deal, and it's on curve as well. It just seems like a great combo to me, so I'm surprised that this hasn't been explored a little bit more. But maybe in a shallower card pool after rotation, people will try to take this thing up, and we'll see if it's enough of a combo to actually win games. Now, a quick entry in the list is the Akroan War and Weaponize the Monsters. Now, of course, Claim the Firstborn goes in here somewhere as well. It also works with Weaponize, and it probably works better with Weaponize, but Akroan War can steal anything, and also sort of wraths the board and lets you attack with their creature for at least one turn. So you can steal a questing beast with this, and then before you have to give it up, just sack it to Weaponize the Monsters, get rid of the beast, and maybe pick something else off, or dome the opponent or whatever. There's just so many cool things you can do with Weaponize. Of course, the red-black deck can sacrifice its creatures in other ways, like Village Rites and whatnot, but if you just want to go mono-red, you've got not only Claim the Firstborn, but also, don't forget about it, the Akroan War to go along with Weaponize. I can see this actually being an interesting deck if there's a lot of creature-based strategies going on in the format coming up in the next standard. You know, Claim the Firstborn plus like Witch's Oven was already a good enough combo while Black-Red Sacrifice was a real deck. And it still kind of is. I don't want to take that away from it. It still kind of is. But a lot of that is in large part due to the fact that Claim the Firstborn works so well with free sacrifice effects, because your opponent just can't play cheap creatures. Well, with the Akroan War, they can't play big creatures either. But now we get to move into a category that's like combos that you're very likely fully aware of, but they've received like more press than the combos we've already talked about in this video. You know, these are combos that have already received some attention in the standard meta, and they've been by and large found to not be as good as we want them to be yet. But again, we're getting rotations in, so it's time to reevaluate these somewhat well-known combos, starting with stuff like Colossification and Storm Herald. Now, in case you haven't seen this one yet, somehow, all you gotta do is dump the Colossification into your yard with like a Cathartic Reunion, Tormenting Voice, whatever. Or maybe you mill it into your yard any number of ways. Whatever you do, you want that thing in your yard so that when you play Storm Herald, it goes onto the Storm Herald, and then you can either untap it with a Sudden Spinnerets, or you can fling it at your opponent. Either one is probably going to win you the game. Now, so far, format has not been super conducive to this, and I'm not sure it's going to be after rotation. We're still going to have cards like Eliminate and Heartless Act that are super hostile to combos like this, but we do have some stuff that's leaving the format that's hostile to combos like this too. People won't be able to like ramp unbelievably on turn 4 with Nissa anymore, right? So I think Nissa leaving the format really helps out these sort of mid-rangey combo decks that operate on turn 4 or 5, because if you're on the play against a Nissa deck, they're just going to do something outrageous when they have all that mana, whereas you're just going to Storm Herald, Classification, oh, it gets eliminated. No, I'm sorry, it's terrible. And then they go and they play their 14-14 Krasis or whatever. It's not going to happen anymore in the new format, so maybe there's a little bit more breathing room for decks like this. But all in all, I'd watch out, because some of the cheap removal that's still going to be available to us is really hostile to a combo like this, but it's at least worth trying again. Another one you've likely seen before is Hushbringer and these giant Titan things, right? Like whether it's Euro or Croxa, Hushbringer works really well with these because, yeah, you don't get the your opponent discards a card. You don't get the 3 life, draw a card, drop a land, whatever. But what you do get is a giant Titan on like turn 3. You just get to have a 6/6. And whenever the Titan attacks, you'll still get these bonuses too. So I know a few people have seen this. People have really experimented with the Mardu Croxa Hushbringer deck, and it just hasn't quite been at the level it needs to be. But maybe, again, after rotation, tricks like this will be a little bit better. You know, especially if there are main deckable built-in answers to Euro, and those will probably come in the form of graveyard hate, one of the best answers to those answers would be to just be able to play your Euro. Like, not have to send it to the graveyard and then escape it or whatever. Just play your Euro and it sticks to the board. Seems like a good answer to graveyard hate, so maybe we'll see some more decks based around this combo. At least try to attempt to maybe be a thing. In case you can't tell, I really like this combo and I want it to exist. But probably the combo that you're like most aware of already in this entire video, but also, conversely, the combo that I think is most worthy of reevaluation after rotation is the Peer into the Abyss combo. Whether you're using Teferi's Tutelage or you're staying mono black or whatever and you're playing Underworld Dreams, I think this is probably going to be a much better combo post-rotation. Maybe some sort of blue-black control deck that can counter the Ugins when your opponent tries to play them, and then just slap this combo down on like turn 7 and win on the spot. Again, Underworld Dreams, Teferi's Tutelage, no matter which one you're doing, they both win on the spot, but you could also go like Burl Fist Oak if you wanted to be a superstar, but mostly I'm expecting either Tutelage or probably more likely Underworld Dreams to be the combo kill with Peer, and I think that deck is probably going to be much, much better post-rotation. Oh, and by the way, there's also Beanstalk Giant Fling. Earlier, I talked about the adventure decks being able to just Fae of Wishes for an Ugin, and that's the way they win the game some of the time. They also get like a mass manipulation. They're not going to be able to do that anymore, but one thing they can still do is the old Beanstalk Giant Fling trick, which has always been one of the more creative tools in their arsenal. Just go grab a Fling. Usually they can grant it and then Fling on the same turn because it only costs 6 mana, which is not much to an Adventures deck that's already cast a Beanstalk Giant with a Lucky Clover on the table. They got all the lands in the world, so it's not too hard for them to play a Beans. And then on the next turn, if they got nothing better to do, they don't even have to attack you. Just, put the Fae of Wishes back in their hand, granted for the Fling, kill you on the spot. And that whole play took 8 mana, which again, they very likely have. Are you going to play an Ugin and maybe force the scoop, or go get that Fling and definitely kill the opponent? Just remember that this is a thing they have in their toolbox. But now we move into, I guess, our final category, which is combos you're statistically less likely to be aware of. I'm sure that a lot of you are aware of these combos, or maybe you've thought of them at some point, but they've since drifted from your mind, and maybe it's time... I just moved the light, sorry. But maybe it's time to, think of these combos again, because not only are they slightly more obscure than the combos we just discussed, but I think that they're just as powerful in terms of the potential they might have in the new format. Starting with one of my favorite combos in this entire meta right now, and that's Treacherous Blessing and Enigmatic Incarnation. There are so many combos with Incarnation in the first place that I could discuss any number of them, but I like Treacherous Blessing the most, being able to play it on turn 3, draw a bunch of cards, and then on curve on the next turn, drop an Enigmatic Incarnation, and it actually does something the turn it comes into play. Not only does it search up a 4-drop creature, like whatever you want, but it also gets rid of your Treacherous Blessing for you. It's just a really sweet combo, and you can do a whole lot of cool things with Incarnation, but I think Treacherous Blessing is one of the coolest things you can do, and it's also one of the most powerful things you can do, apart from just being cool. So look out for this combo. I think that Enigmatic Incarnation has not quite had its day in Standard, but it's destined to eventually. With every new card that gets printed, definitely evaluate it through the lens of Enigmatic Incarnation, because this card is going to do something cool one of these days. Now, there's two more combos to discuss in this video, and I couldn't decide which one I wanted to discuss last, but this next one, I decided to, I guess, make number 2, sort of, even though we're not really doing a countdown structure or anything. I decided to make this the next to last combo, because I could imagine this one being really annoying, first of all, so deduct points for that. And it's also intensely mana, well, yeah, extraordinarily mana intensive. Yeah, that's how I want to phrase it. Intensely mana intensive. Would have been a dumb sentence, but anyway, and I couldn't help but say it. I had to say it. But anyway, I really a lot like the combo of Shipwreck Dowser and Sublime Epiphany. Now, Shipwreck Dowser was like my number 2 sleeper when it came out. I really like this card a whole lot, and I made no secret about that. And I think the most, broken thing you can do with it in the upcoming format is Sublime Epiphany, because of course if you play Sublime Epiphany, copy the Shipwreck Dowser, you immediately get the Sublime Epiphany back from your graveyard. That's ridiculous. You effectively have a Sublime Epiphany in your hand for the rest of the game, and anybody who's played it one time in a game knows it can be an incredible blowout, so imagine playing it 2 or 3 times. This is the kind of thing that if you had open mana to continue casting Epiphany, your opponent will very likely scoop to, because there's just not really a whole lot of ways out from under this. It's an unbelievable combo, and even though it requires all the mana in the world, once you actually get to it, I don't see a whole lot of ways of beating it, so I want to remind you, this combo exists. But my final combo of the video meets all of my criteria, right? This is a cool combo. It's going to be a lot of fun to pull off, and I think it might actually have some real potential, be a strong combo in the next format, if everything goes right. But one way or the other, this is probably the most satisfying combo on the list to pull off. Of course, I'm talking about Spore Web Weaver and Terror of the Peaks. Now, all you got to do is give your Spore Web Weaver some form of indestructibility, right? Whether it's just straight up indestructibility, right? That's probably the best way to do it. You can do that with like Heroic Intervention for just 2 mana right now. And then all you got to do is somehow play a 1-drop or something and deal 1 damage with Terror of the Peaks to your Spore Web Weaver. And then it'll make a guy. Well, look at that, a guy came into play. So you can use that guy to ping Spore Web Weaver again. You can do this over and over, right? Every time you ping Spore Web Weaver with Terror of the Peaks ability, it'll create a creature, which then triggers Terror of the Peaks. You ping your Spore Web Weaver, so you're just filling the board with little spider guys. And if there's some way to give them haste, maybe Perforos, for instance, then you probably win the game pretty easily off of that. I like the idea of infinite spiders, and honestly, Spore Web Weaver and especially Terror of the Peaks aren't the worst cards in the world to begin with. So if we can find the proper shell for this deck, I could actually see it being one of the cooler and even one of the more powerful infinite combos in the entire format. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. I probably could have done like a top 25. Honestly, so let me know all the stuff that I missed down there in the comments section, all the stuff that's fun and powerful and has potential in the new format. Tell me about it down there, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that I left unexplored in this video, mostly kind of for time's sake and my own sanity and all that. So yeah, I got a lot of editing to do. I'm going to probably go ahead and do that, but I guess I will remind you again to do the YouTube stuff, just like the video. Check me out on Twitch. I play Magic there. That's what I do on the Twitch box. At this thing. You can also check out the Patreon at patreon.com/spmtg. $1 to vote on content, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. You got to do that. Spoiler season is coming up. You probably want to be party to all that stuff. So, yeah. I think that's all I got for this one. Just let me know how you felt about it down there, and point out anything that I missed, and tell me how dumb these combos are and how they're never gonna see play ever. I think some of them do have potential, though. I'm really excited about Peer into the Abyss. I think that might be a real combo in the next format. But just let me know how you felt about it, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.